This week in a conversation, I have the honor to receive out of the island of Guernsey off the coast of Britain, author Rachel Le Mesurier. We're going to be talking about her fantastic historical novel titled Artie's Courage, which is book one of a trilogy titled The Promise, the Musician's Promise. But before we get into this interesting video, I'm reminding you once more, it's important to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if you do, don't forget to click the notification bell so that way every time a video is posted, it'll go directly into your portal. So let's get started. Again, my name is Ardain Isma, and I'm here this afternoon with a very interesting, compelling writer, author from Guernsey, right off the coast of Britain. So interesting, we're going to be talking about her fantastic book titled Artie's Courage, which is book one of its trilogy that falls under the title The Musician's Promise. Rachel Le Mesurier, that's her name. So Rachel, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Rachel, would you please tell the viewers of CSMS Magazine who is Rachel Le Mesurier?
Well, hi everybody. I'm Rachel Le Mesurier in French, or Le Mesurier as it's commonly pronounced in the UK and America. I live in Guernsey in the Channel Islands with my husband and my two very young children and my crazy but wonderful assistance dog in training, Zorro. And we live a very happy life in Guernsey. If I'm not writing, then I also teach sign language, so I'm never bored.
Very good. So today we're going to be talking about your interesting book. Interesting. You know, it's a book that also raises the issue of class antagonism. Also, it raises the issue of what a great sociologist, French sociologist called Monique Pinson-Charlot, and she's written a book about the world of between themselves. So Esperanza, your protagonist in the book, seems to be resisting that choice, being forced to team up with someone your heart actually rejects. And she, on a twist, falls in love with this musician, and she wants to fight to keep it. Could you please, Rachel, tell us, you're not going to tell the whole plot now, but tell the audience how the story develops from here.
So Esperanza, the thing I love about her is she's such a strong heroine. I think when people think of historical romance, their minds spring to sort of Jane Austen and a lot of your fainting damsels in distress, going around for tea with Mr. Cucumberly, and it's so not that kind of romance at all. Esperanza lives in a time where there was a great deal of social unrest, where the class system was changing at a rapid pace. And Esperanza's unusual because she sat in a sort of middle class area that was actually quite unusual in revolutionary Mexico at the time. Mm-hmm. So she's got her social climbing parents who want to be the aristocracy, want to marry her off to Don Raul, who is a very important political figure. And they're not quite there yet, and they're desperate to get her into this sort of upper circle of society. And as Esperanza sort of gets drawn into the revolution and she learns more about the lower classes, mm-hmm. she realizes that she identifies a lot more with them, and she wants to fight for their freedom and to fight for their rights, which is quite at odds with what her parents want for her. So I guess it's a novel about class struggles. It's a novel about fighting for freedom and fighting for what's morally mm-hmm. right, rather than what you're told you have to do.
That's correct.
So she's a bit of a rebel.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to use the word too. But just for the purpose of education, so we're talking about the Mexican Revolution that takes place during the 1810s.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. So, Rachel, there's one thing I want to ask you. This spike of this thing, as when we talk about uh, when a tragic accident in one of the local gold mines devastates the town and tears Artie's family apart, Esperanza is horrified to discover that the man responsible is the very same Don she is supposed to be marrying. At that point on, this whole thing now, was that actually her own overture opportunity for her now to stand up and say, well, this isn't it. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, so that's the point, really. That's the main turning point for her as a character, I think, because all through her life, she's sort of drifted through being told she's going to marry a Don, she's going to always wear jewels and beautiful dresses and attend balls and things. And when the mining accident occurs, that was actually based on a real event that happened around that time. And it's so devastating for her to suddenly realize the impact that these upper classes and that this ruling family in her area, the impact that they are having on the lives of the ordinary people. And the shock for her is just how little they care. They're destroying people's lives and they just don't care. And that's the point where she stands up and says, you know what? I'm going to stand with Artie. I'm going to stand up and do what's right. And as a potential future Donya, I actually hold power that I can change things. And she becomes quite a force to be reckoned with at that point when she sets her mind to it.
Let me ask you something. As a writer, Rachel, when your pen directs you directly to the part where you have to describe clashes of, social classes, I would say, or maybe when the underprivileged has to face the privilege. So how do you feel writing these lines?
Oh, I'll be honest, I cried my eyes out the whole time I wrote that chapter. I do get very emotionally involved with my characters, which is a great thing for the writing, not maybe such a great thing for me and the people who have to live with me at the time. But yeah, I mean, some of the research that I did into the background of the real history behind these characters and behind these events was heartbreaking. And I mean, the novel, I've made sure there's plenty light moments in there as well. It's not what I would call a depressing read necessarily, but there is some real history behind there that is absolutely heart-wrenching. And it actually came from me researching family history to begin with, and finding that it's very difficult to find out about any ancestors who weren't rich or famous, because those working classes, those underclasses, they just kind of get written out of history, and you have to really do some digging to find out more about them. But the more you find out, the more rewarding it is, because they led some fascinating lives, the hardships that they went through. It's a story that I felt needed to be told.
Let me ask you something, Rachel. How do you feel writing a historical novel based on the Mexican Revolution? How did you get to choose this particular topic?
I've actually got my late granddad to thank for that. So my granddad was an incredible man, but his main passion was history. He was an avid reader, but he really loved history.
Okay.
And family history in particular was something that he was very passionate about. He's got huge books of family history, and for a 90-year-old man, he knew how to use an iPad. So he was very heavily into his research. And one day I mentioned to him about how much my little girl, she was 2 at the time, how much she loves the movie Coco by Disney Pixar. And he casually mentioned that, that would have been Mexico. Did you know that we had some relatives who fought in the Mexican Revolution? And I didn't know that. So the more he talked about it, and the little snippets that he knew were so interesting, that between the two of us, we agreed to look into it some more, find out as much as we could. And he joked that, we should write a book about it. And unfortunately, he passed away before he ever saw that book come into reality. But the idea just played on my mind, and that's where it all started from. Really, the more I got into the research, the more gripped I got by it, and I realized there was a story that I really wanted to tell.
Did you travel to Mexico while doing this research?
The plan was to travel, but then COVID struck, unfortunately, and ruined my research trip, which was such a shame. But on the positive side, at least it gave me the time to sit and really focus and concentrate on the research of the novel. So yeah, once the COVID pandemic is done, that's one of my top priorities, is to go out there and see where it all happened.
Can I fairly say that you are deeply rooted into multiculturalism, or can I say that?
Absolutely. I mean, I live on an island where multiculturalism is a big thing. We have a lot of different cultures mixed in here, and we do actually have quite a Mexican population here. So
really?
my
I didn't
own
know that.
my own ancestors, I had quite a lot in the military, and I also had a lot of merchants. So they travel the world, and I'm lucky to have some fascinating people in my family tree all over the world that I've learned so much from. That I think multiculturalism is something that's important to me. We all live in one big, wonderful world, and it's full of fascinating cultures and histories that I think the world needs to know about.
So, and I'm guessing that your French last name that you have is derived from your husband, right?
No, actually, my Le Mesurier is my maiden name.
That's your middle.
So yeah, Davison is my married name, but I chose to publish under the name Le Mesurier because of my granddad. It's a tribute to him, really.
Okay, it's a tribute to him. Okay.
That's right.
So well into his 90s, he was still doing, he could use like a tablet, and he was helping you in the process also?
Oh, absolutely. He was, unfortunately, his body failed him some years before he died, but his mind was sharp as a razor. He was a very, very intelligent man, very well traveled, and incredibly, he was actually a traveling musician in his younger days, hence the inspiration for that being Artie's job.
Let me ask you something real quick now. When you're referring to the musician who actually, with whom that Esperanza falls in love, are you?
That's right.
That's right. Okay. Got you. All right. So that's very interesting. I'm so fascinated about historical novels because to me, I think, well, sometimes people call it also creative nonfiction. Because it's really based fundamentally into true history. And then what you do as a writer, you take that history, you simplify it, or you embellish it with beautiful novelistic prose, to make it easier, like an intentional story. And that's the way I feel reading your story, quite frankly.
Thank you.
So, Rachel, let me ask you something, because I know this one, book one, is the beginning of a new series. And if I understand also, the book two is, I believe that, what's the title of this? Is A Hero's Hope, isn't that?
A Hero's Hope, that's right.
Okay, so now, when do we expect to lay our hands into A Hero's Hope?
I can actually exclusively reveal Heroes Hope is being next to me. Okay. So my wonderful publishers sent these through recently, and I've got the glorious hardbacks, and I've also got the beautiful paperbacks. So I only received these yesterday. It's tremendously exciting for me, but according to the front of A Hero's Hope, it will be released in July this year.
So we're saying now, they will not be released simultaneously, all at once. That's but it'll be one after the other. So let me ask you a question. And for the purpose of marketing, and let's say you've written a trilogy. So you think maybe you can give yourself an interval, maybe 12 months, and then the book two will be made available, and then another 12 months or 6 months in between. So how do you do that? I know it's your publisher actually decision, but
honestly, when I first wrote these novels, I had no intention really of publishing them. They were for fun more than anything else, and I think that became clear when I then decided actually I would try publishing, and I sent them to a few different agents who came back and basically said, we love it, we absolutely love it, but it doesn't fit into a particular genre. We do not know how to sell this. And that was kind of the problem, because they're saying if people want to buy historical romance, they expect Mr. Cucumberly and balls at Nebberly and that kind of thing. And it's so not that. If they expect a romance, then they're not expecting all of the battles and things and the real history behind it. They're expecting something light and fluffy, and it has its light and fluffy moments. There's also this heaviness behind it as well of the revolution. Correct. And so they said, look, go direct to publishers, because actually as agents, I had 4 of them who were very interested in marketing it for me, and they just said, we don't know how, we've never marketed a book like this. So go direct to publishers. And straight away, the first 4 publishers I sent it to sent me back offers. So clearly those agents were absolutely right in what they said. And I have no idea when it comes to the world of publishing. I went in totally oblivious to everything that it involves. And I chose 5310 because of the incredible work that they do in more than just publishing. They really want to change the world and make it a better place. They do a lot for charities and that kind of thing. And I love that about them. I felt like they were the kind of guys I could really work with for, 20, 30, 50 years, however long I'm publishing with. And so when they make decisions about things like when the book should be released or what the cover should be, they're fantastic. I go entirely with what they say most of the time, and while they're always happy to answer my questions, I trust them as professionals that they're always doing the right thing by me and by the books.
Very good. Okay. Very interesting, because I'm very familiar with historical novels, especially if the setting is in the Caribbean or somewhere in Latin America.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I like Marquez a lot when he does that, and many great writers like, of course, Eduardo Galeano from Uruguay, and also great poets like Pablo Neruda from Chile. Many of those great writers. So I really follow them a lot, because their stories are not too different from my story, in a sense, I would say. And I know clearly what's interesting in your book is the issue of class. It's been raised also. So now my next question, after this trilogy, Rachel, do you have any other project?
I do have a few ideas. I think mainly sticking with historical, but I do have an idea for another potentially a historical romance that I'm playing with. All I will say is that it does involve pirates. I've always wanted to write a pirate novel, and there's no time quite like the present. So that's the idea that I'm mainly playing with at the moment. Yeah.
You seem to be very much interested in colonial history also, right?
Yeah, well, as I say, my family were merchants and things, and I do have quite a lot of history all over the world, but the colonial history is the one that I think I found most fascinating when I've been looking at it. So yeah, watch this space. Hopefully there will be more.
Okay, let me ask you a question quick. Every time I have a guest in the conversation, at some point, Rachel, we switch from talking about literature and to something cozier, because I know you live in an island. Now, if I were to take my wife to Guernsey right now, and I'm looking for a wonderful, cozy place to eat at a restaurant, where you would recommend, and what kind of dish that is associated with the local population that you would recommend that we order?
Well, that's an excellent question. I've got to say that being on an island, obviously the seafood here is spectacular. It's always locally caught, really fresh. So if you like seafood, there will be quite a choice of restaurants for you. But there's one that's in St. Peter's Port, which is called the Octopus. And I've got to say, it's my favourite restaurant. They do the most incredible seafood, all cooked in the traditional Guernsey way. And I'd say it's beautiful. So if you and your wife want to come over, you'll be very, very welcome. I'll take you straight to Octopus.
Okay. So now my next question is, what kind of music that is very popular on the island where you?
Again, being being an island, we've got quite a strong culture and relationship with the sea. So sea shanties are very popular over here. There are a fantastic sea shanty groups that perform over here quite regularly. But again, being quite multicultural, there's lots of different types of music on the island. I think my favourite, which they don't play on the island unfortunately, but the Gypsy Kings is something I listen to a lot, and I love it. It's got that kind of hot Latin vibe that makes me want to do things and get stuff done. It's a lovely variety of music over here, I'd say.
Okay. So who's your favorite writer, favorite author of all time when it comes to Rachel Mesurier?
Actually, I happen to have her book next to me. I was reading before we started this call. Isabella Lond, I'd say, has to be my absolute favorite. I take a lot of inspiration from her. So her female characters are so wonderfully strong. And this is actually my favorite book of hers, Zorro. My assistant's dog is named after the protagonist, Zorro, because that's how much I loved her retelling of it. And the fact that in this novel, it's the female characters that are the strongest. Zorro's mother he's a warrior chieftain, and his grandmother is the one who teaches him to fight. And just these incredibly inspiring women that I want to make more mainstream in historical fiction, really. There's no swooning damsels in here. They are tough cookies, and it's a fantastic swashbuckling read, as are a lot of her novels, I know. So yeah, I'd have to choose her, I think. She's a very inspiring lady from Chile, I believe.
I know, yeah, she's Chilean. And you're not the first one in the show also to bring her name as a favorite author. She's beloved, by the way, across the world. You know,
I'm a huge fan.
I know. So as we come to the close of our conversation, Rachel, let me ask you this question. Is there a lesson that you want to give to a young woman like you who would want to embark upon a journey of writing historical fiction, the stuff you've been doing? So what lesson would you give in writing historical fiction?
With historical fiction in particular, I think the lesson that I would want to give any writer trying historical fiction is to make sure that you are true to the history as much as you can be, out of respect to those people who really did live through that. I think we owe them a debt, really, for their stories and things, to tell them as honestly as we can. So I'd say, as a historical writer, the best thing you can do is to make sure that you don't conveniently change key events in their life, or key features about where they lived to suit your narrative. You've got to write your story around them, because really they're the ones who take the lead when it comes to historical fiction. That's
true. So true. And with that, Rachel, I'm just going to say it's been more than just a pleasure to have you this afternoon in the conversation.
Thank you very much, sir. It's been an honor.